Charlize Theron, the South African-born goddess of Hollywood, an Oscar-winning actress, and one of the most admired figures in modern cinema, seems to have it all. Beauty, success, power, and respect. Yet behind the elegant red carpet smiles and flawless magazine covers lies a story so dark, so profoundly human, that even her most loyal fans have struggled to comprehend it. At 50, Charlize stands as a woman who has conquered Hollywood, but at an unthinkable emotional cost. Her life has been marked by tragedy since childhood. Few people know that the woman who once played warriors, queens, and survivors on screen has faced the very same darkness in real life, including the most shocking event of all, the night her mother killed her abusive father in front of her eyes. That trauma shaped every role, every heartbreak, and every wall Charlize built around her heart. And yet, her struggles didn't end there. From toxic relationships and career betrayals to painful loneliness behind her fierce independence, Theron's life is a testament to how fame can never truly protect you from heartbreak. Despite the glitz of awards and the glow of success, her journey reveals the haunting truth that even the strongest women can carry wounds that never fully heal. Today, as Charlize turns 50, her story forces us to ask, how does someone so powerful, so admired, still feel so broken inside? This is the untold tragedy of Charlize Theron, and what really lies behind the mask of Hollywood's most fearless icon. Before Charlize Theron was a global icon, before the Oscar and the glamorous film premieres, she was just a young girl growing up on a small farm outside Benoni, South Africa, a place of wide-open skies and hidden dangers. Her early life was marked by both innocence and unease. Her father, Charles, was a construction worker, often away, and her mother, Gerda, was the resilient woman who kept the family together. But behind the idyllic facade of rural life, something sinister brewed inside their home. The shadow of alcoholism and abuse. Charlize has often spoken about those years with both pain and detachment, describing her father as a very sick man. He was an alcoholic, unpredictable, and violent. The tension that filled their home was thick enough to shape her earliest memories, creating a sense of fear that would linger long after she left South Africa. Then, one night in 1991, when Charlize was just 15 years old, that fear reached its devastating climax. Her father, drunk and enraged, came home waving a gun. He shouted, threatened, and tried to break down the door where Charlize and her mother had barricaded themselves. What happened next would forever alter her life, and her mother's. In a moment of sheer terror and self-defense, Gerda Theron shot and killed Charles. It was ruled a justified act, a mother protecting her daughter. But for Charlize, that night was the dividing line between her childhood and everything that came after. The world would later call her fierce, powerful, fearless, but those qualities were forged in trauma. That violent night gave her both her strength and her silence. She rarely spoke about it publicly, not out of shame, but because the wounds were too deep to name. It wasn't until years later, in emotional interviews, that she admitted how profoundly that tragedy shaped her view of life. Trust and survival. After the tragedy, Gerda and Charlize left their home and tried to rebuild their lives from the ashes. For Gerda, it was an act of survival. For Charlize, it was the beginning of transformation. She poured her pain into ambition, a burning need to escape, to create a new identity far away from the place that had stolen her innocence. At 16, she left South Africa for Italy to pursue modeling, then later moved to the United States. She barely spoke English, had no family support system, and carried the kind of emotional scars that don't show in photographs. Yet, even in those early days, people noticed something about her, a quiet, simmering intensity. When casting directors saw her, they didn't just see beauty. They saw a woman who had lived, suffered, and survived. That emotional depth would one day make her one of the most powerful actresses of her generation. But back then, she was just a lost teenager in Los Angeles, trying to make sense of her past while struggling to pay rent. The bright lights of Hollywood seemed galaxies away from the dusty farm roads of Benoni, but Charlize was determined. Her pain became her compass. Every rejection, every closed door, every sleepless night, she endured them all with the same resolve her mother showed that night of terror. Survive. No matter what, Charlize Theron's tragic beginning didn't define her, but it built the foundation for the woman she would become. And yet, as we'll see, escaping your past is never truly possible. The ghosts you run from have a way of following you, even into the spotlight. By the time Charlize Theron reached her 30s, she had become one of Hollywood's most celebrated figures, a symbol of strength, talent, and beauty. She had gone from a farm girl in South Africa to an A-list actress whose performances could both terrify and move audiences. From Monster to North Country to Mad Max, Fury Road, she proved herself to be one of the few actresses unafraid to risk everything for authenticity. Yet behind every professional triumph lay a private heartbreak, one that would follow her through the glitz and glamour of stardom. In Hollywood, where image is everything, Charlize seemed untouchable. But fame, she would later admit, is isolating. In interviews, she's spoken of how the industry often views women as disposable, celebrated one decade, forgotten the next. And even as she won awards and global praise, she was quietly battling an emptiness that success couldn't fill. That emptiness often showed itself in her relationships, intense, passionate, but ultimately short-lived. Her relationship with actor Stuart Townsend was one of her longest and most meaningful. They met on the set of Trapped in 2001, and for almost a decade they were inseparable. Fans adored them. They seemed like Hollywood's most grounded couple. But as Charlize's star continued to rise, the balance between their careers shifted. Fame brought distance, and by 2010 the relationship quietly ended. She later said, "We grew apart," but insiders described it as one of the most painful periods in her life. Then came Sean Penn, a romance that captured headlines everywhere. For a while, the world thought Charlize had finally found her match, a fellow Oscar winner, a rebel, a man who understood her intensity. They even became engaged, and rumors of marriage swirled through Hollywood. But in 2015, just as quickly as it began, the relationship collapsed. Sources close to her said that Penn's controlling nature clashed with Charlize's independence. Others whispered that she simply refused to lose herself again for love. Whatever the reason, she ended it, decisively. When reporters later asked her about it, she didn't attack Penn. She simply said, "I needed peace." That statement revealed everything. For Charlize, love had never been about fairy tales. It was about survival. Her childhood had taught her that love could hurt, that trust could be dangerous, and that peace, real peace, was the rarest thing in the world. Even after achieving everything she had ever dreamed of, she often spoke of the loneliness that came with it. In one candid moment, she confessed, "I'm not lonely because I'm single. I'm lonely because it's hard to find real connection in this industry." While Hollywood painted her as a strong, untouchable figure, Charlize's personal truth was far more fragile. She wanted family, stability, something real. But the deeper she went into fame, the more artificial everything felt. The flashing cameras, the endless red carpets, the awards, they became armor, a shield to hide the ache within. And then, as if the universe heard her unspoken desire for meaning, Charlize's life changed in a way she never expected. She became a mother. Adopting 2 children, Jackson and August, transformed her life completely. Suddenly, the woman who had spent decades running from her past found herself face to face with the responsibility of shaping 2 new lives. It was beautiful, it was healing, but it was also a reminder of everything she had lost. At 50, Charlize admits that she doesn't dream of romance anymore. Instead, she dreams of peace, purpose, and raising her children in a world kinder than the one she knew. Still, the pain she carries, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the memories, never completely leaves. In Hollywood, everyone plays a role, but Charlize Theron's tragedy is that her most haunting role has always been the one she lived in real life. As Charlize Theron's fame grew, so did the pressure. Hollywood adored her, the fearless actress who could vanish into any role. From the monstrous Aileen Wuornos in Monster to the unstoppable Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road. But behind the applause and the Academy Awards was a cruel truth. The more success she achieved, the lonelier she became. Fame had given her everything, and taken just as much away. The entertainment world has a way of devouring its brightest stars, and Charlize wasn't immune. The scrutiny, the gossip, the relentless need to appear flawless, It all came with a price. While men in Hollywood were celebrated for aging with dignity, women were quietly punished for it. Even as she continued to deliver powerful performances, Charlize began to feel the sting of being labeled too old or too difficult. Casting directors, once desperate to work with her, began asking whether she could still sell tickets. The double standards were exhausting. Charlize never hid her frustration. In one candid interview, she said, "I've worked hard for 30 years, and now I'm told I should be grateful for playing someone's mother. That's not how I define my worth." She wasn't angry for herself. She was angry for every woman who had to fight twice as hard to be seen as equal. But it wasn't just sexism she faced. It was betrayal. People she trusted, managers, producers, even friends, sometimes used her name for profit, manipulating contracts and leaking stories to the press. And when she refused to play along, she was painted as cold, difficult, or impossible to work with. The truth was far more painful. Charlize was simply a woman who refused to be controlled. Her fight for artistic integrity came at a cost. Projects she loved slipped away. Opportunities were quietly withdrawn. But she kept going, not because she needed more fame, but because she refused to let others define her. She had survived far worse than bad press. In many ways, Charlize's greatest battles weren't fought on camera. They were fought behind closed doors. Against an industry that often treats trauma as entertainment. Against people who believed her strength made her unbreakable. But even strength has its limits. After decades of pushing herself to be perfect, Charlize began to crack. She later admitted to struggling with depression, exhaustion, and a haunting sense that she was living a life that no longer belonged to her. Her career had become a fortress, one that protected her from the world, but also trapped her inside. And yet she didn't give up. She began to shift her focus, producing films through her own company, choosing roles that challenged Hollywood's narrow vision of women. She used her voice for causes close to her heart: gender equality, abuse prevention, and human rights in Africa. For Charlize, fame was no longer the goal. It was the weapon she would use to fight back. Still, even with all her accomplishments, there was an undeniable sadness in her words whenever she spoke of love, trust, and belonging. The industry had made her powerful, but it had also made her wary. "People think I'm strong because I survived," she once said. "But sometimes surviving means you've had to lose too much." Charlize's life by her 50th birthday became a paradox, a story of victory built on heartbreak, of beauty hiding pain, of strength forged in solitude. And as her peers celebrated her legacy, she quietly withdrew, choosing to live away from Hollywood's chaos. Her days now revolve around her children, her activism, and her peace. But deep inside, there's a quiet acknowledgement that even after all she's overcome, the scars of her past, both personal and professional, will always whisper beneath the surface. Her tragedy isn't that she failed. It's that success never healed the wounds it was supposed to erase. At 50, Charlize Theron stands at a crossroads between the woman she once was and the woman she's fought to become. Her life has been a relentless journey through loss, fame, heartbreak, and triumph. Yet she's still searching for something most people take for granted: peace. For decades, she built her identity around survival. Now she's learning how to live without constantly fighting. But even as she embraces this new chapter, the echoes of her past still haunt her, reminders of the pain that shaped her into one of the most formidable women in Hollywood. In recent interviews, Charlize has spoken with rare vulnerability about how her life's traumas have informed her choices. She's candid about the abuse she witnessed, the therapy she needed, and the constant fear that she might repeat the cycles of pain she escaped. But perhaps the most powerful thing about Charlize today is her refusal to hide. She's no longer the woman pretending to be unbreakable. Instead, she's allowed herself to be human, to grieve, to rest, to forgive. "Healing isn't glamorous," she once said. "It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it takes time. But I've learned that it's worth it." Her children, Jackson and August, have become her anchor, the one constant in a world that's always shifting. She's fiercely protective of them, especially as a single mother in an industry where judgment comes easily. Every decision she makes now is filtered through the lens of motherhood. The woman who once chased perfection now finds her happiness in small, quiet moments, making breakfast for her kids, laughing in the backyard, or turning off her phone for days to just be present. For Charlize, these are the victories that matter. Still, the media never truly leaves her alone. Headlines speculate about her love life, her appearance, her choices as a mother. She's often portrayed as the beautiful loner, a narrative that both fascinates and frustrates her. But Charlize no longer chases anyone's approval. The girl who once begged Hollywood to see her now understands that true validation doesn't come from fans or critics. It comes from within. And perhaps that's the most heartbreaking part of her story. It took decades of pain for her to realize that she never needed to prove her worth to anyone. Charlize's journey has also transformed her into a quiet warrior for change. Through her foundation, she's worked tirelessly to support women and children affected by HIV and domestic violence in South Africa. She's used her voice to challenge the hypocrisy of the industry that once underestimated her, demanding better roles for women and more authentic representation. She doesn't see herself as a savior, just someone who refuses to stay silent when she knows others are suffering. As she reflects on her 50 years, Charlize Theron's tragedy is no longer about what she's lost, but what she's had to endure to find herself. The world sees her as an icon of resilience, but for her, survival was never a choice. It was instinct. And now, for the first time, she's beginning to live life not as a survivor, but as a woman who's finally free. Still, when you look at Charlize, the poise, the confidence, the depth in her eyes, you can sense the lingering melancholy beneath it all. The years have softened her but never broken her. Her pain has become her power, her past has become her purpose, and her solitude, her sanctuary. So, as Charlize Theron turns 50, her story isn't just one of tragedy, it's one of transformation. She has faced the worst and come out stronger, wiser and more compassionate. And though her heart may carry scars that will never fade, she has finally found the courage to stop running from her story and to own every part of it. Because sometimes, the most heartbreaking tragedies don't destroy you. They remake you into someone unshakably real.